Hey guys, Steve here from Bloom Audio. Today we've got the latest from Burson Audio's Grand Tourer series, the Conductor 3X GT. So with this GT series, Burson has been taking some of their products, putting it in a reference chassis and turning some aspect of the performance up to the next level. So with the Soloist GT, we got a dual mono setup in the headphone amp with just a ton of power and an all-new design for the Soloist product. For the Timekeeper, we got dual Class AB mono blocks, which was a total reinvention from the combination headphone amp and speaker amp that the Timekeeper had been before. So with the Conductor, do we get a turbocharged version of the original, a complete reinvention? Let's take a closer look. The Conductor 3X GT gives you most of the same basics as the 3X reference, just with some tweaks here and there. So, we've got the same cool case design, but this time we've got a case fan in there. And I should add, the case fan's a little quieter than the one in the Soloist GT, if you've used that. You get the same smooth volume knob, but this time it seems to be operating a little bit more accurately. I see less lost numbers in there, which has been a problem with some past Burson models. Again, the front is largely the same. There's just a couple tweaks to the UI to make up for some of the new options in here, like head plus sub. So they've also exchanged the mic pass-through on the old one so you get an XLR, you get a 6.3 millimeter unbalanced, and you get a 3.5 millimeter mic headset connection that handles both the input and output rather than the pass-through on the older model where you had to use a splitter and an adapter there. So now what's really cool is the updates on the back. So if we flip this around, you can see where on previous Conductor reference models, you had only XLR or only RCA for your inputs and outputs. So this has two channels, two input options with either XLR or RCA, and the outputs as well for preamp output or the sub output there. So that's a really big bonus, I think. Turning it back around, if you're not familiar with this, most of your functions are handled through this OLED screen. So this is your inputs. You see the arrow pointing into the box. It took me way too long to figure this out. Your outputs are the arrow pointing out of the box. Now, whichever you choose, you use the wheel and pushing the wheel in order to change that around. So there's inputs, outputs, and then your general settings, which allow you to change the gain level, that filter, which is, again, those don't make a huge difference. Your DPLL, which is a sort of noise jitter reduction, the emphasis, OLED level, and you can do a factory reset or set an auto off timer if you don't want this to stay on. So we've talked about the emphasis before. This basically makes those filters give you a sharper treble cut. And so if you do find the device to be a little bit bright, the emphasis on is one way you can kind of maybe add a little smoothness, but maybe potentially a little veil to the treble. But that can be a useful feature for some people. So yeah, there's also some improvement, you can't tell here, but there's some improvements to the overall screen quality. It's just a little bit easier to read and other things than the previous version. Just some minor updates there. Burson definitely has a house sound at this point. It's big, it's bold, it's a little bit brash, and I think the core aspect of it is Burson's philosophy of leaning into solid state and digital. Rather than trying to make it sound tubey or analog-y, Burson's philosophy is to really just push those aspects where solid state really can excel. So you get deep bass extension, you get tons of power, you get rock bottom noise floor, and virtually as near zero harmonic distortion as you can get. And so that's what Burson's doing here with the Conductor, is trying to push all of those aspects of the design to the next level. So in the bass, you get something that's tight, it's accurate, it has seemingly bottomless extension. And where the bass is really linear, it has this sort of hidden power where it unlocks all of this slam and dynamics in the bass in a lot of planar magnetic headphones. I've listened to the Hi-Fi Man HE1000, the SE and the V2 on a bunch of different DACs and amps and other things. And it, the Soloist GT and now the Conductor 3X GT both sort of unlock this low-end force that you just never would have known was there listening on another DAC or amp. The mids present a lot of detail with a sense of a natural timbre and a lot of transparency. And the mids are just a little bit forward. So while the soundstage is wide, you get a little bit more feeling of intimacy in the vocals because they're just a little bit pushed forward. And then with a musical performance, you get this, when you have a highlight, whether you're talking about, rock music where you have a guitar solo, or classical or jazz where you might have a woodwind solo or trumpet, it just moves it a little bit more forward to highlight that a little bit more strongly. The treble has really strong extension, and it can be a little bit bright, but I felt like the GT version of the Conductor actually controls it a little better than some other Burson models where you get that extension, you get that like shimmer air, but it doesn't feel fatiguing or really lend to the fatigue in the way that some other Burson models have. So I really think this treble's been well-tuned and balanced for the 3X GT. In the soundstage, again, the stereo image they build, it's very big, very three-dimensional. There's strong positioning and separation in there. I feel like spatially, it's not quite chord level in terms of the imaging and the separation and the weight of the individual elements, but there's very strong positioning and very big sound stage that really just lends to this big, bold sound that Burson gives you. For comparison, we brought out a couple of friends. We got the Conductor 3X reference, which is basically what the 3X GT was designed to build on and be an upgrade from. And we brought the Questyle CMA15. So now the CMA15 is a really different design and philosophy from Burson, but if you're shopping for a headphone, a DAC amp in that $2,000 to $3,000 range, the CMA15 is something we give a really strong recommendation. So we wanted to put those both out there together and see how they compare and what might be the best for you. Now, in our written review, we go through a lot of the differences in, what outputs and inputs are on the back, on the front. How does that do? What do these different switches do in the interface and everything else? For the video, that can get a little bit dry. So you definitely want to check out our written review for further explanation of some of these feature differences between the two. But for this, we really wanted to focus on the sound. The 3X reference and the 3X GT are really close in their overall sound signature. But there are some subtleties. I think in pretty much every way, those subtleties give the edge to the GT. The first thing was what we talked about in the bass. Now, the 3X reference does have a ton of power in this class. The 3X GT takes that up to the next level. And they've clearly also made some tweaks in the tuning in the amp itself. And it just gives you that little bit extra that gives you, again, the things like the dynamics and the slam in the bass with harder to drive planar magnetic headphones. The GT just really brings that alive that much more. And again, it's still a very tight, very accurate bass that it's giving you. It's just presenting it in such a way that brings out those characteristics in headphones much more easily than the reference model did. The other thing is what I mentioned in the treble, where going back and forth, especially with the HE1000 V2 and in the headphone as well, which is another one we use for a lot of our listening, the reference version tended to get just a little bit more bright. If the headphone is something that lends towards fatigue, the reference model kind of brought out those characteristics a little bit more. On the flip side, the GT, it doesn't sound smooth. The treble is very present and very strong, but it handled the small tweaks in the tuning and the presentation, really handled that brightness a lot better, I think, than the reference did. And it made some of those headphones, which might get a little cringy at points for me, as somebody who's a little bit treble sensitive and leans more towards being a bass head, really just gave a stronger presentation there without losing anything in the definition, in the air, the shimmer, any of that in the treble. So the CMA15 and the Conductor GT have some bigger differences in the sound. Again, where I feel Burson likes to lean into this solid state thing and just present it transparent as possible, with, some brightness and, just fast, linear bass extension. Questyle does like to maybe just get a little bit analog in their design, where they've created a really transparent, detailed sound in the CMA15. There's in comparison with the Conductor, it's clear there's a little bit of warmth in the bass and a little bit more contouring in the treble that makes it kind of just a different fit. So yeah, the big thing you'll notice, I think, right away is Questyle's a little stronger in the mid bass. So it doesn't have that totally linear extension like Conductor does. It just has a little touch of something extra there, where in and of itself it typically sounds neutral, but up against the Conductor, I was feeling this a little bit. And again, the same thing in the treble, where there is good extension and air in the treble, just not as much as the Conductor. And this is going to largely come down to preference in these two spots, where if you want that touch of warmth, if you want that just a little bit of smoothing things out, CMA15 does that. If you want that just really more aggressive Burson sound, Conductor is going to give you that just a little bit more transparency, and it's also giving you more power. When I compared the same headphones going back and forth, Conductor definitely had a lot easier time driving some of the higher end stuff, some of the harder to drive stuff, than the Questyle did. Questyle did better with IEMs. It, to me, had a lower noise floor. It handled sensitive IEMs. It's got these, now the Burson has high and low gain. The Questyle has this sort of super low gain switches on the back that were really helpful with IEMs. So that's kind of the two big differentiators are, do you want this Burson sound that's kind of putting power, I think transparency above all else in the design, or the Questyle sound, which says, we're going to smooth just out just a touch. We're going to just click that magic wand button and just add a really subtle enhancement to the music. So you get that, and do you want the ability to drive the hardest of hard to drive conventional headphones with the Burson, or do you want something that's going to be a little friendlier with IEMs with the Questyle? Either way, they're both great, but there's definitely some clear differences there that would make the difference in your purchasing decision. So far, the Conductor 3X GT is probably the tamest of the updates in Burson's GT series. what it does is take that Conductor 3X reference, give it a little bit more power, adjust the tuning just a little bit, I think a really positive way in how they improve that. And you got to put a fan in there because things are running a little hotter. But it just basically the subtle evolution in performance. So if you're looking for a DAC amp combo with just a ton of power, a lot of great features, that just really embraces what's great about solid state sound, the Conductor 3X GT is ready to take you for a ride. Thanks for watching. You can check out Conductor GT and a lot of other great products at bloomaudio.com. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll be back soon with more hi-fi personal audio content.